Hi everyone. So the first resource that I'm going to be looking at to check accessibility is one of the PowerPoints that I've been using with my students during distance learning. So I use a very similar template for all of my distance learning PowerPoints, and what I do is I provide the students with a copy of the PowerPoint, but then I also screencast a recording of myself going through the slides so students have that auditory, and I can also kind of elaborate on the text and pictures that are on the slides. So I have used very similar templates for all of my different distance learning activities, but this is the one we're going to take a look at today. So taking a look at the handbook, one of the first criteria listed under accessible PowerPoints is checking the outline view. So I go up to view and I click outline view. Most of my slides look pretty good. I can see that these have their title and then the content. But looking down at slides 4 and 5, it just has the title, same with number 7, and then number 8 is completely blank. That's because these either have a title and then pictures, or like slide number 8 is just all images. So to make this more accessible, I could add some text in there. For the screencast, I can explain it, but for students that don't listen to the screencast, they might not be sure of what those pictures mean. So I could add just brief little captions so that students looking at the pictures can also get a understanding of what they're talking about and why they're there. Another criteria listed is to check the reading order. So how you do this is to just click on the slide and then hit tab to make sure that your sequence of reading goes from top to bottom. So that way text-to-speech reading things that are using it can read in the correct order. So when I go through and I check, I see it starts at the top and then it goes down. Same with this one, we start at the top and then move down. So going through, I did check all of these ahead of time and they all do go from top to bottom, so it does check out for that criteria. The handbook also mentions making sure that when you have listed items that they are using bullets or numbers, and I did do that for all of the slides where I list criteria, and this did really help out making my outline view a little bit more cleaner. So that is helpful for accessibility. And then taking a look at color contrast, I did use white text on a black background. I used these colors because I thought they were contrasting, so they didn't look very similar to each other. I also decided to go with a black background instead of white with black text because I felt like the black screen was a little less harsh on the eyes than just having that big bright white screen to make it more accessible for students who may be looking at a computer for a long time. It's just a little bit more appealing to the eye. The next thing I did was I checked the accessibility. So when you go to tools and then check accessibility, two things that come up are, well, three things. The first is the missing of alternative text. So this wasn't really something I was aware of prior to this module, so I will definitely have to go back and add that to all 17 images. And I know this is something that I'm missing in all of my other PowerPoints, so that's definitely something that I will be doing starting from now on. And I'll also go back and make those changes to other PowerPoints that I've been using, just so I am prepared for the future. It also says that Slide 8 is missing a title slide. So if we look at slide 8, that is just all text. It's actually an animation that I used to show the students kind of the setup they'll be creating at their house. But I could add a title to that slide just so students who are viewing the outline view have an idea of what they're looking at. And then this tip down here is just telling me that I do have two of the same slide titles, and that's because I'm still talking about the same topic, but I could clarify that, especially for those who are viewing the outline view, that may be beneficial. But looking at the rest of the criteria that were listed in the Accessible PowerPoints handbook, it does mention about making sure links have meaningful descriptions. I did not include any links in this presentation, but I do know that some of my past presentations have had links to different videos, and a lot of time I just say click here, but that's not really descriptive, so I may need to go back and make those changes to other presentations. It also talks about how tables should be set up and making sure you're including the proper headings. Again, this particular presentation doesn't have any tables, but I have used tables in other ones, so I will want to go back and make those changes that are necessary. Kind of switching gears to look at universal design for learning. In the engagement section, it talks about minimizing threats and distractions. And it focuses particularly on routine. And so I come up with a very similar structure for all of my different PowerPoints so students know what to expect, especially when they're at home learning on their own because they don't have me there to explain it. So I do try to follow a very similar routine in all of my PowerPoints so students know what to expect. They know that I'm going to give them their challenge, then I'm going to go over the different criteria a little bit more in depth, and then I'm going to wrap up by going over the assignments that they need to do, followed by a quick little checklist summarizing what they need to do for the week. So I follow that same format so students know what to expect. It also talks about reducing visual stimulation. While I do think that like the black here is covering up most of the picture of the slide, some of the slides that are all pictures, this background can be a little bit distracting. So that may be something that I want to adjust in the future, maybe making it a solid background, because like for here, you only see a little tiny bit, which isn't very distracting, but for here, it's kind of right in the center and students may be drawn to that and it may be a little bit distracting. So that might be something that I want to go back and change. Another criteria in the language and symbols section was illustrating through multiple media. So I do create a screencast of me explaining it so students get that auditory feedback, but I also do try to combine pictures and words, so students are getting both of those. I also try to throw in animations, so like this one, when we present it, I go through and I tell the students that they're going to need a ramp, they're going to need to make their car, they're going to have their tiny passenger, and then they have to have an obstacle to crash into. So since I can't do a visual demonstration for them, I try to include a model so that students can see exactly what they need to do and what should not happen during their crash test. So I try to incorporate pictures, auditory, and the text whenever possible so I can appease all learners. UDL also talks about comprehension, and one of the specific criteria is activating or supplying background knowledge. So what isn't shown in this PowerPoint, but what I do in the screencast, is I do start off by showing the students a clip from the movie Cars, and I give them a couple questions that I want them to think about and observations that I want them to make. Then before I go into their challenge for the day, I have them brainstorm what kind of cars they've seen, how they've seen crashes happen, why we have seatbelts in cars. So I do kind of give them some prompting questions to think about to start activating their background knowledge. And then a final component of UDO was the physical action. One of the specific criteria was varying methods for response and navigation. So students can choose if they want to watch the video cast or if they want to just go through the slides and look at it at their own pace, or if they want to do a combination of both. It is their choice, they can decide. I also use a combination of text and images so students are getting varied ways to see it. So like I tell the students how they need to set it up, then I show them this visualization so they can hear it, they can also see it in action. And then a final part of the physical action that I also felt this hit was using multiple tools for construction and composition. So if we scroll down to where I give the students this week's checklist, you can't really tell from the PowerPoint, but when I do go into the screencast, I give them a brief explanation of their different activities that they have to complete, and I do mention that they can choose how they want to show it to me. So like for the planet, they can draw out a picture, they can draw the picture on paper and then take a picture and submit it to me. They can create a video of them kind of talking through their plan, or they can take a picture of their plan and then create a voice captioning telling me through it. So they can choose which method works best for them. And I have that very similar setup for all of the activities that they have to submit. So overall, I do feel like my presentations are pretty appealing to all learners. There are a couple things that I do have to go back and fine tune, especially in making it accessible for the assistive technology, because that wasn't really something I thought about prior to this module, but now I am more aware of how to make it more accessible for those learners.